when we left each other last time here at the Kunpen, I said, see you next week. If, and I added an if. It, it was not at all scheduled to not come, but sometimes we have a kind of intuition. I said, surely I'll come, but you never know. And actually, things came up that I had to find myself I found myself in a difficult situation, finish what I was doing, which was very important for the center. This is kind of problematic situation that I'm not going to go into details. Um, and of course, in that moment, I needed to choose. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to finish, but instead I stayed all day and in front of the computer working on this. I finished it. And I asked Francesco to come, and just thinking about that, it brought me this phrase that I'd like to. And first, I want to give the context. I mean, Buddhism came to Tibet about 1,500 years ago. In Tibet, there was the Bön tradition, a religion that we can call animistic. And at a certain point, there were the different local entities, divinities, and each village, each region, zone had its own main divinities. It was, there are many religions like this, and animistics. And at a certain point, one of the kings of Tibet, and I'm really sorry for you, I have such a bad memory for names. It's not that I have a bad memory for names, it's that I don't give enough attention at the moment that I hear these names. So I don't know them to then forget them. This is the truth. Anyway, I think it might be Re Tsongkhapa, but in any case, he invites Padmasambhava. First invited another master who said, no, Tibet is a difficult land. We don't need an expert in philosophy, or to talk about morality. Here we need a shaman to manage the Tibetans. To bring the Dharma here, we need a shaman, someone who knows how to manage these types of energies, these situations. And so Guru Padmasambhava was invited. He was a very important. He was a very important master, but he had this, let's call him shaman. He could manage local spirits, divinities, and let's say that Padmasambhava came, and after him, other masters came. Today's not the day to talk about the history of Buddhism in Tibet, but Buddhism became important, was not at all easy. When they built the first temple, Samye, it's said that during the day they would build, and at night the spirits would actually take it down. They would destroy it. From my point of view, there were those who didn't like Buddhism, and at night they would take away the bricks and the wood. And so they would day after day they would build during the day, and at night they would tear things down. Many stories that Padmasambhava was able to tame these spirits. And Tibet was not an easy land. There's also this one story that comes to my mind, to a previous life of Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, Panchen Sampotashi, in the city of Shigatse, near in Tashilumpo, the monastery of monasteries. They would say, in the square of town, people never, there are always people, and also the magic of Tashi Lumpo never finishes because there were um, there was a long story of people not being favorable to Buddhism, and there was this period where there was this strange habit was created, you know, so to show that people were against the monastery, people would actually get up and pee on the monastery. And it's said that Panchen Sampotashi did a kind of magic spell, and then the men were not able to actually urinate, but they would stay for hours. So anyway, this saying lasted. So to say that it wasn't an easy land, this reminds me also that Panchen Sampo Tashi, after having helped the monastery of Tashi Lumpo, which was one of the most important monasteries at the time and still is today, and so he left the monastery. He walked about a few days' walk away, and it's where today is the monastery of Gangchen, the village of Gangchen, where Lama Gangchen comes from, and many important lamas were invited there from the monastery of Tashi Lumpo, like Gyalwe Gendin Drup, for example. So let's say it's a place where people would. So instead of going, let's say, on so these people were really considered difficult and rude, and they asked him why he came there, and he answered, if I don't go where there's need, then where should I go? And I remember once Lama Gangchen, for many years, especially at the beginning, when people would come to Rinpoche, people, people would come, with people who were, let's say, how can I say, people who were with characteristics that were, let's say, a little bit out of the norm. He would treat them like jewels, The stranger they were, the better he treated them. Instead, others who didn't need, he would send them to he'd say, oh, go to this center. And Lama Gangchen, he would welcome people. He would receive people from morning to night. I mean, sometimes to 2 o'clock in the morning. And then he would say, I remember once, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he said, now I need to go and see this person. He was exhausted. And I said, what are you saying? Your love has no end, your patience as well, but your body needs rest. And I was tired. The point is, I was tired. That's the truth. But I said, Rinpoche, let's go to sleep. I knew where he wanted to go, and I knew, from my point of view, it was something really silly. There was no need, no real need. And I said that to Rinpoche, and he looked at me, and he told me this. If we every day say, may all beings have happiness and its causes, may all beings be free from suffering and its causes, and then there's someone who really needs or feels that he really needs, what do? We turn our back. And I was so ashamed, and I said, okay, Rinpoche, let me accompany you. And it was an important lesson for me. So Panchen Sampo Tashi, the previous life of Lama Gangchen, was already known for going to difficult places where people needed. And sometimes it made me smile sometimes. It's a little bit similar. It's like when you're in the middle of traffic. You're in the middle of traffic and you complain about the traffic. as if you are not part of the creation of the traffic. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I mean, when you think about it, I'm just as guilty for the traffic as everyone else. And sometimes a disciple of Rinpoche would say, oh, because, the disciples of Rinpoche are like this, but, oh, maybe, me as a disciple of Rinpoche, maybe I have some extravagant ways. Anyway. So at the beginning, for Buddhism to take root in Tibet, someone very powerful needed to come. And that first period, for Buddhism to integrate into the Tibetan reality, it was mixed on many levels. It was integrated, adapted. Adapted, and it was integrated into the Bon tradition, like the Tibetan prayer flags at the beginning had nothing to do with Buddhism. They're from the animistic Bon tradition. And then, the prayers are Buddhist, but the colors, the tradition, it's really comes from the Bon tradition, like many other things as well. But as time went on, and I don't know how long, it seems like, and that Tibet was made of many small realms, and there was one king who was not interested in spirituality. He was interested in wealth and military power. His name was Lantarma, and Lantarma was against Buddhism. He destroyed monasteries, killed monks, and it's said there's about 12, if I'm not wrong, 12 monks who were in the mountains meditating far from everything. And they didn't know about any of this. And when Lantarma died, I don't know if you've ever seen the dance of the black hat. Surely you've seen. If you look online, look at Tibetan dancing. There's this really large Tibetan hat with these really long cuffs, and so this is a story of a monk who kills this king. This cloak has the long cuffs because it's hiding a bow and arrow, and in front is covered with, and so hidden, he was able to, with a bow and arrow, kill this king. And so Lantarma is like the reincarnation of the devil, or there's a Tibetan culture when the young people don't do this, but the old people, they can put a hand on their head and another hand behind, and then they stick their tongue out, and then they bow down a little bit, and it's to say, I'm not against Buddhism. I don't have a horn on my head, because they say that Lantarma had a horn on his head, had a tail, and he actually had a black tongue. So it's kind of lost, this tradition. But the older people, they would do this. They would rub their head, bow down, and put their one hand on the head, one on the where a tail would be. So when Lantarma dies, these monks come down from, and they're able to reestablish Buddhism. And what comes through them is the Nyingmapa tradition, the old school. So it's what Guru Padmasambhava brought the first time to Tibet after centuries. And other masters from India come to Tibet. And at a certain point, one of the kings, there were many kings, he had a lot of faith in Buddhism, and he wanted Buddhism to take greater root. and he saw that there were many teachings, but they weren't. There was they lacking coherence among them, and they didn't seem coherent among them. So they, he said, we need a truly valid um, master, and it took years to come to this decision. He gathers his people to also to raise money, to prepare for this trip to go to India to invite a master. I mean, this is it, India was seen as a barbaric land. Um, the, if you wanted to invite one of the most important masters, at least you needed to show that you had the resources to treat him well. So, so they were the one sign would be to bring an offering to the monastery, and as they were going to India, they got they were blocked, and this other king took their money. They put them in prison and said, "Okay, your king needs to. We need his weight in gold to save him," and so they're able to collect lots of money, but it wasn't enough. The answer was given to them: what you brought me is enough to give back your king, but without his head. And then the king says, listen, my life is not this important. What's important is bringing this master to Tibet. So go to India and tell him that I've offered also my life for him. So they leave for India, a very difficult trip. It's not that they got there and went right to the master. I mean, it took years to get there. And finally, they got to Atisha, the master they wanted to invite him. To make him a long story short, he was one of the most important masters of the monastery of Vikramashila. It's an important center of practice, a monastery. And also here, Buddhism was already in decline in India. So it was a crucial moment. It wouldn't be so easy for a main master to leave an institution like that. After a long process, and also the intervention of Tara, because Atisha made a retreat on Tara asking what he should do, and the answer from Tara directly was that his life would be shorter, but it would be more beneficial. So the abbot said, yes, he can go, but I think he said for a maximum of 2 years. So he leaves, he gets to Tibet, and thinking it would be 2 years. And at a certain point, he needs to come back after 2 years. And in the story, on the way back, coming back, he can't get back because there's a war, and so that blocked him. And so he wrote something when he was in Tibet, and it's a lamrim. It's the lamp that clarifies the light, the lamp that clarifies the path, the Chanchub Lamtrim. And he sends this manuscript to the monastery because he couldn't get there himself. And when the abbot read it, he said, if he had remained here, he would have never written something so important to Buddhism. So at this point, he can stay in Tibet as long as he needs. And what was this manuscript? So when they brought Atisha to Tibet, they brought him to a temple it's a Samye temple, many, many floors. There was a small temple for every meditation practice. So there was one floor for the sutra, another floor for tantra, for each class of tantra, and then each practice, each divinity, etc., etc. And when he got to Tibet initially, he said, I don't understand why you've invited me here. You have masters who can teach you. And when he went to Samya, he saw this. He said, now I understand you have many aspects of Buddhism, but you haven't been able to put them together. You see them separate when instead it's part of one path. And so he writes this practical manual at step by step where one is up to enlightenment. Something that before him no one had ever done. And this becomes one of the most important texts, one of the most important teachings known as Lam Rim. After these 2 years, so Atisha, so this is the context. You can imagine the situation. After so many years, they were able to invite him to Tibet. He's about to leave. He was in, I think, my father, who's here, can remember where he was. So the old road between the airport and Lhasa would go by this monastery of Tara. And in that place, and there's still the throne of Atisha. It made of actually of it's very, very simple. It's actually made of dirt, of hard dirt. So at this point, he's about to go back to India. He had been there for 2 years. He's about to leave back to India. The king is there. The others are there to thank him. I imagine after all that effort, you know, he was leaving, going back to India, and theoretically he wasn't going to come back. And afterwards, he actually stayed for another 12 years. But at that point, they thought he was leaving forever. And at that point, the king, he said to Atisha, can you give us one last teaching before leaving? And Atisha, he answered in verse. And these verses have been transcribed, and they're very beautiful. He's had this ability to speak heart to heart directly. This image of Atisha is here with the red hat. And in this verse, he says, life is short, and the objects of knowledge are many. During the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep. Choose well where you want to put your energy, what you want to learn. And if Atisha said this in the 11th century in Tibet, that the objects of knowledge were many, here we are in 2023, what would he say? I mean, even if he were to see Lhasa in 2023, what's the key here? Fundamental key is that life goes by quickly, and even before it went by quickly. It wasn't that before one didn't have that feeling that life was short. We're talking about Tibet in the 11th century, and Atisha was saying the things to know are many. You can spend your whole life, and you'll never finish learning things, information to acquire. Well, what's the key? Is it about acquiring information, knowledge, or taking care of this life and what goes beyond this life? During the day, we're distracted, not because we're just staring at the sky all day long and we don't learn anything. It's, it, did anyone have a German education here? When I was a child, I had a book that was called Struwwelpeter. Maybe somebody knows it. It was a book that was originally German, and to show you that you shouldn't be distracted. There was, for example, in this book, you know, there you're eating lunch and you pick up the tablecloth thinking it's the napkin and you pull it and everything falls off the table. We're not talking about this type of distraction. When we say you're distracted, maybe we're very concentrated and we're focused on 100 different things, but we're distracted from ourselves. We're distracted from our development, inner development, our development of love and wisdom, from our inner path. We're distracted from reality. We're distracted by illusion. We're distracted by objectives that are completely illusory and utopias, but not in the good sense of the word. We live in a crazy utopia. The worst is that when we live in some kind of utopia and thinking that it's possible, we're distracted from what has deeper meaning. So no matter how much we've been able to study philosophy, see beautiful, deep things, read, listen, reflect, etc., etc., in our daily lives, how much time, how often is our mind directly connected to this path, and how much are we distracted by, this one did that and that one other person did that, and this information that has nothing to do with a transformation, an inner transformation. How much of our days have to do with actions, or even actions with awareness or without awareness, but actions that take us to concentration, satisfaction, presence, love. I mean, is it like 50%, 50, 50, 80-20? So 80% aware, 20% without awareness, or the opposite. Even the opposite would be great, right? I mean, in that whole day, if we have a half an hour to meditate, it's a luxury. And in that half an hour, we have 10 minutes where we are actually present, then that's a good day. Because we're distracted. And someone might say, we're distracted because we live in this modern world. I'm sure if you go and live in a small village in the middle of Tibet, maybe in up until a short time ago, there were villages that didn't even know that the Dalai Lama had left Tibet. Even there, I say, that the neighbor did this because that other neighbor, and then this and that and the other. I mean, there are many objects of distraction there too. But let's forget about remote villages. Let's look at ourselves. During the day, we're distracted. And at night, we sleep. Okay. Are we able to direct our mind in a virtuous way while we sleep? Are we able to fall asleep generating positive thoughts? because it's said that that last thought before falling asleep directs our whole sleep. And so a key is to go to sleep not exhausted, falling asleep watching TV, but in a moment where we're we're able to reflect on something virtuous, we can generate a virtuous mind, and to fall asleep in that state. Do we do that? Not, not so much. If our tendency is to go to sleep without many other thoughts, and it's not that during the night we we take a specific direction. I have very strange dreams, very surreal. Forget about it. Anyway, so so during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep. The things to know are many. The things to know. The world is full of information and things. You'll never finish learning. There's information about every single subject, but this connects to an interesting topic it's interesting for today's world. Today, how useful is it today to know how to count or to do accounting? Those of us who are here, do we need to do some accounting sometimes? Or we need to actually need to do basic mathematics like adding and subtracting. Do you use a calculator or do you do it in your head? I speak for myself, and I can't. I need to always use. I need to use a calculator. When I had COVID and I had those 14 gorgeous days for myself, my mind was a little bit foggy. So I went online to do lessons of mathematics, to look at how to. But the point is, we don't really use this anymore. So, I mean, how important is it to know how to do the basic math? I mean, it's important to know the logic, but we have tools that can help us. Today, how much do we use our memory? The information is so accessible that we use our memory less and less. Let's remember that our brain has a specific characteristic, a particular characteristic. The more we use an aspect, the more that aspect develops. The less we use that aspect, the more that aspect degenerates. So the more we do arithmetic, the easier it will become. The more we memorize, the easier it will be to memorize. The more we rely on external tools to recall things, our ability to memorize will degenerate. The more our ability to memorize will degenerate. So the more we rely on external tools, our need, the need we have to actually do these things, it just diminishes. So, for example, when I took the whole system of astronomy that they use to make Tibetan calendars. So those who study so in Tibetan system, they spend 5 years studying astronomy just to calculate the position of the planets, and then they use that for the calendar. And what I did is I took all that information and I transformed it into Excel. So now all you need to do is to write the date, and in just a second, the result comes. So all that knowledge of calculating the days for the calendar, little by little, it will be lost. So more and more we need less and less to develop these abilities, because we have access to this information and these tools. There's one problem, there are many, but one problem is we're substituting that space where we needed to memorize, to calculate, to do something. We're filling up that time, that space, with useless things. What was the first advertisement, for example, for electrodomestics, for home appliances? You should buy the vacuum cleaner, the washing machine, to have more time. I mean, the idea at the beginning was that these machines will do the job for you, and you will have more time to do the things that are more important. Is that how it is today? Is that what? No, it's not the reality of today. We have instruments that do calculations for us, that do research for us. They took all of the information, they put it all together, they summarized for us. And in this last time, I used this new technology of artificial intelligence. It's incredible incredible in some aspects. I had incredible conversations about Dharma, asking very specific questions, very specific, and the answers were really very good. I thought, oh well, now I can. And I thought, well, now I can retire. But no, I mean, we can have someone do the research for us that can connect the information. But the time, what do we fill up our time with now? This is important to think about. But to understand this, let's go back to the words of Atisha. Life goes by quickly, and during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep. I mean, the things to learn, there are too many. So choose with awareness what you want to learn. Don't waste time. Because the most precious resource that we have is our own life. You know, do we like the idea of dying? We're very attached to our life. No, we think, worst case scenario, one dies. No, life is so precious. Well, where is this life that is so precious? Life is in every moment, in every meaning, every meeting, in the interactions, in feelings, and sensations. That's where life happens. In every moment, that's where life happens. And even if there's this strange feeling when we're very young that life is to come, and at a certain point, there's too many things to do and one can't live one's life, and then before you know it, life has gone. No, life is in every breath, in every word, in every meeting, in every action. And here, Atisha asks us to think about what we want to fill our life up with, because we have two choices or two roads to take. Live life as an end in and of itself, where life is precious because it's precious, it's life, and should be lived. It's a it's a kind of survival in the best way possible. Try to survive as comfortably as possible, try to avoid sufferings, and try to have as many pleasures as possible, try to have to get our objects of desire. This is a linear view, but there's also a cyclic view. And in that view, this life is one of many. But the one who lives this life is always the same, like a Ferris wheel. You can go round and round and round, or carousel, but the one who gets on is always the same person. And even you get on once, and you have one experience. You get on again, you've changed. The experience will be different. So one way is to live life as an end in and of itself, or as living life as a means and not as an end, where the priority is not what I do. I'm not the information I acquire. Instead, how am I transforming in front of, faced with what I do and how I interact, how I live my life? Who am I? How am I transforming? And here there's a part that's very similar. So there's something similar. The Buddhism is similar to some scientific aspects, and like epigenetics, for example, said that our DNA is actually not static, but it can transform. It said that DNA changes mostly in front of two aspects, the inner or outer environment. So the places I go, the people I meet, what I see, what I hear, this creates a change, a transformation of my own DNA. This is the external environment, the inner environment instead. Now, what does this mean? This means that today we're influenced by the environment that our ancestors lived in, the situations they lived, the places they lived. This influences us still today. But it's interesting, it's explained that what has more transformational power over our DNA is not the external environment, but the inner environment, our emotions, our feelings, how we live, what happens, how we live inside, what happens outside, on a subjective inner way, how I live the external world. This has the greatest transformational change over my DNA, over me. And there are many studies that show that certain traumas are actually handed down generation to generation. Even there's some that say that even the happiness is genetic. In part, what happens is that there is this aspect that the experiences that we live are handed out. So even on a genetic level, it's interesting to think that we are a part, not wholly, but a part, a result of the the living, the the experiences, the feelings of our ancestors. And it's interesting to have this awareness. Similarly to this, and just last point about this, the DNA has another important characteristic. DNA is is i- is is based on probability, and it's not deterministic. So if you have a gene, m- it doesn't mean that that gene represents a potential. Normally we have different possibilities, according to the environment. So according to the environment, we for the same reason that we have identical twins, you know, and depending on where they grow up, they develop different aspects of themselves. So in Buddhism, we talk about mind stream and the imprints in the mind stream. It's said that when someone dies, he brings with him, beyond this life, these imprints. It doesn't bring any theoretical knowledge or his own body or even emotions. He brings with him these imprints of the imprints of the emotions and the thoughts and the actions, and he brings the imprints. When one is born, one brings with him all of this can um, ripen or not, depending on the conditions he meets. So it's very similar to what we were saying about the epigenetics. And what can so the our inner environment that includes our choices, um, this has the greater transformational power. Their subjective level. If I live life as a means, it's a means to cultivate a state of joy, of peace, of a being that is well with himself and also with others, but that goes beyond just this life. This is my main objective. So, so we go round and round, but we always come back to the same thing, which is what is more important to me? Doing important things, learning many things, accumulating a lot of wealth, or developing inner characteristics that allow me to live life better. I think this. At the end, patience is important. Respect, gratitude, satisfaction, balance, awareness, coherence, love. And then there are other characteristics too. These are not characteristics that develop from one day to the next. They're things that we need to nourish. We need to take care of day after day. And it's not easy. Because when we're in front of a situation that we don't like, someone who acts in a way that we don't think is right, someone who acts aggressively or violently towards us, what's our tendency? To maintain our stability our balance or to get into some kind of symbiotic relationship with this person. Just a short time ago, I had never seen it like this, but it's crazy. I saw it in myself, and I said, "What am I doing?" I saw this process, which is I see someone who acts in a certain way that, in my opinion, is wrong. For example, that person comes to me and treats me aggressively, speaks to me aggressively, acts. It seems like he wants to hurt me. And we say, this behavior is wrong. But we, in front of this behavior that we think is wrong, our tendency, what is it? Is to remain calm, respectful, full of gratitude and generosity, compassion towards the other, or you spat on me, I'm going to spit on you. How do you allow yourself to treat me like this? So this is our natural tendency. And what's crazy is I condemn your behavior that I think is wrong, and I use your action to justify my own. And then I do the same that I was condemning before. It's clear, isn't it? It's a little bit crazy, isn't it? I say, you shouldn't steal. It's wrong to steal. But given that you're stealing, I'm going to steal from you. So I justify myself. It's pretty contorted. Our tendency very often is this, that we're on the we're either on the defensive or we're on the attack. I mean, if it were to work, that's fine. There's a definition that at the beginning I didn't really understand it well, but over time, little by little, I had a different perception. And it's the definition of what is virtuous. Sonam and Dikpa, Papam and Punya in Sanskrit. And there's no good translation. It translated as merit and negative karma. But it's what is virtuous, what is non-virtuous. So a virtuous conduct, which is not the right translation, but let's say virtuous conduct, non-virtuous conduct, this is the best translation we can come up to. So the definition says that which, when it will ripen, give fruit, an action that when it will bring, will generate results, those fruit will result into a state of well-being, an inner state of well-being, of peace. Those actions instead, where that interaction, when it actually gives a fruit, when it generates an inner sense of malaise, those are considered non-virtuous actions. And what's the definition of mental defilement, for example? Senam rapten. All the states, all inner behavior, that when they're present, they strongly take away that feeling they bring a state of non-peace, a strong state of non-peace. When we feel jealous, do we feel at peace? When we feel dissatisfied or angry, desire? So I say, oh, well, someone could say, well, it's not a bad feeling to feel desire, and if that were true, then nothing would ever be sold. We wouldn't need to buy anything. But the truth is, the stronger the desire, the stronger the desire, the stronger that feeling of non-peace. So there's a kind of tension. So these things are not mental defilements because we've defined them as such. No, these are things that when they're present, we don't feel good. And we want to feel good. It's all there. It's all about that. Because someone might say, but the world is not fair. I'm not even sure why I opened this subject. This is delicate, what is wrong. But if I were to be really, really sincere, I would say that the world is fair, completely fair. And someone would say, well, how could you say such a thing? Well, look at what happens here and there. Everything that happens, and there's an enormous list of things that happen that I wish didn't happen. They come as a result of a very complex interaction between the parts. Because this one over here and that one over there, a very complex equation. And no matter how much I don't like the result, the result of that equation is perfect. So we can talk about justice or fairness on different levels. There's on certain levels, I can say with certainty there is no justice. When there are rules, but let's not get into this right now. The point is, if we start saying, I start justifying my dissatisfaction, my anger, my malaise, because this is what's happening in the world, because of what's happening in the world. If I were to be, if I were to suffer for everything that happens in the world, then I wouldn't find a reason to be happy. Is there a moment where bad things will stop? I don't think there has ever been this moment. But if I have to be happy, if I'm happy because there are beautiful things out there, then in the end, at the end, how can I manage if I'm sad because of negative things that are out there and happy because of good things that happen out there? If I let myself be taken by dissatisfaction or anger, by nervousness, by anxiety is already different, but if I let myself be overtaken, is it normally because of a general reason or something specific? Usually there's a specific reason. So I think it's important to get into a point to find that peace where we can say, it doesn't matter what happens, it's not a valid reason to lose my inner peace. With anger, do we resolve the situation? Sometimes we need a strong energy, a destructive energy, but to really lose patience and develop a feeling of resentment or jealousy or envy or anger, does that resolve the situation? No. So having this resolution of saying, regardless of what happens, I'm not going to be taken by what makes me lose my balance, makes me feel bad. Even if it comes spontaneous. Sometimes we're able more than others. But really look at the order of our priorities. All of this because we need to look at what our priorities are. With all the with all the love I have for you and the Kunpen, my priority wasn't being here. And it's not that one thing takes away from the other. So we really should ask ourselves, what is my priority? And one of the most important priorities for me is what happens inside, what we bring with ourselves day after day, month after month, year after year, life after life. Because at the end, when we come into conflict, is it something that just ends there, or is something that we take with us? It stays. It leaves marks. It's said that to build up a relationship of trust, what do we need? That we need a short time, a long time. Normally it takes a long time, and to destroy a relationship of trust, just very, very little time. It's crazy how sometimes we actually were able to destroy something not for something that's happened or something that we directly experienced, but for a judgment or for a perception or what we heard or what we think someone said. We destroy what we took so long to build. So it doesn't matter what happens. We obviously need to be natural. We're not robots, but we should set a direction of what we want, be clear about what we want to develop. And we shouldn't be distracted from this. We shouldn't be distracted from our path. We should not be distracted from ourselves. And shouldn't be distracted from others. We should be able to see others around us. See the world that surrounds us. See our own actions. Live with this awareness. And if we knew how to use well, which I actually doubt very strongly, if we knew how to use the technological resources that we have available to us today, and we were able to use the space that we have to meditate, to do things that help us generate our virtues, then that would be wonderful. But it's interesting that as there are technological advances that allow us to have more free time, we're increasing this inner entertainment, our need for entertainment. And there's nothing against entertainment, but one thing is a moment of fun, of relaxation, and something else is having a void that needs to be filled. Because I get home and I don't know what to do. I'm tired, and I try to fill up this void. And this comes together with another aspect that I just add quickly here, that we have very primitive feelings. And one is that we want to feel pleasure. We want to feel relief. We want to be able to have this feeling of, let's call it pleasure. And there are mechanisms, inner mechanisms, chemical, that bring us this, that are connected to our senses. But the tendency is that we get used to them. And the more we're able to get these pleasures and with ease, the easier it is, um, then the then the then the less energy we'll put into trying to get trying to get these pleasures. The more I'm able to be rewarded without putting in effort, then the less effort I will exercise to get what I want. Just today, for example, I mean, there there are things that we can do immediately that, as were before, we had to wait. There's many things like that, like writing a letter to someone, or buying something. Or once, when you wanted something, what did you have to do? Go out, go look, go look in the shops, talk to friends, just try to find someone. Go here, you go to a store that's specialized in this, and ask here, ask there, and then maybe after a couple of days, and there was a pleasure. Today, what do? You do a very quick search, you choose, and and if you need to wait 2 days, it's already too long. Maybe I don't need it for a week, but I want it right away, right? Obviously, you know, don't 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 worry. Soon there'll be drones. They'll there'll be drone deliveries, and in 20 minutes you can have your package at your door. But what's the real problem there? The real problem is that we, more and more, in my opinion, we're creating this mechanism of getting a quick reward without effort. And this gets worse with the fact that one of the things that generates the inner feeling of dissatisfaction, as uh, um, the, the, what generates these feelings of satisfaction, this dopamine, what children like the most, it would be movement, colors, and sound. If you want to entertain a small child, you need to give him something still, or give him something in movement, or you give him something in black and white or full of color, without sound or with lots of sounds. This is something very primitive from our brain, these three things that generate stimulation, that are very connected to our survival, and connected also to dopamine. Um, Now, what do you need that is the combination of color, movement, and sound? Just a second. And how much break do we have between these? Nothing. I mean, it's a drug. Chemically speaking, it's a drug for us that creates addiction. We have to be careful about this. I'm more and more convinced that it's. I'm very against these. Those who know me for years, you've never seen me pull out the flags like this. But I see the damage this is creating also in myself. And someone might say, oh, okay. Someone might say, well, if you use it well. I talked about this 2 weeks ago. Okay, what about cocaine? Can you use cocaine well? Uh-huh. Maybe, if you're a doctor, for example, a doctor who is is doing a 48-hour shift, absolutely is absolutely exhausted and can't even stand up, and can't even stand up, but needs to save someone's life. And this cocaine would allow this doctor to reconnect with his senses and save this person's life. So we could say this is a good use of the cocaine, but it doesn't take away any of the negative side effects. So it needs to be avoided. The same thing, if I have a tool, something that creates this addiction, even if I am putting in Buddha's phrases, but that addiction is being created just the same. So there's no justification for it. So if Atisha talked to us in the 11th century that during the day we're distracted, at night we sleep, what worries me the most is how difficult it is becoming to have constancy, to putting in effort. Am I wrong, or does it seem that emotionally we're becoming weaker and weaker? Am I wrong? No, I don't think so. One aspect of the weakness is that we're not used to working hard anymore. We're used to obtaining everything right away. And so we become, if things don't go the way we want, when we want, then we give up. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but this is a dynamic that is deeper. It's something deeper than our thought. It comes from obtaining pleasure without walking the path, without the process of getting there. So we get used, not on a conceptual level, but on a chemical level, so we're getting used to more and more to obtaining a result without having to put effort. And this increases frustration, anxiety. There are many, many problems that come out with this. And why this topic come up is that sometimes the reason why we do something is not for that specific reason, but how that process will actually transform us. I saw Lama Gangchen. Sometimes he would have people do things, and I've always had a very practical mind. And I would think, what are you doing? And this is not going to work. This person to do this job is not the right person. And sometimes he had a marvelous characteristic where, and when he was sure that something was right, that until he was proved wrong, he would just go forward. And once I was there and I said, "Oh, it's not going to go well. It's not the right person." And at a certain point, he said to me, the objective is not for it to work out. I don't know. He would ask someone who knows how to say only tashi delek in Tibetan to teach Tibetan, and I say, what's not going to work out? He said, it's not important that it works out. What's important is that this person is going through a process that is positive for himself. I'm just inventing that example. But sometimes when we're in front of an example, a situation, we're used to a very we're used to seeing how the usefulness of that or not, when instead there's also the whole process that is much more important than the objective and practical aspect. If someone goes to a Tibetan lesson from someone who doesn't know how to speak Tibetan, maybe he learns he learns patience, which would be much more useful than actually learning Tibetan. But having this view in our life about what we do in our daily lives, because going back to the phrase of Atisha, so during the day we're distracted, and at night we sleep, and we're full of distractions. If he said this in the 11th century in Tibet, and not even in Lhasa, I mean, they were already like that. We could say, what about us? The key is not about changing the life, it's about changing our perspective. Changing the way we live life. Because we're full of opportunities. A little bit like Lama Gangchen Rinpoche. There was a time where Lama Gangchen Rinpoche always had his TV on with the news on. And it just, I don't remember which channel it was. Sometimes people would change, but for him, this would change to a different news channel, but for him it was always the same. And once I said, do you like watching the news? He said, no. Are you interested? Because if you're really interested in what's happening in the world, you just need to look for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night, and it's enough. I don't know if you've ever kept a news channel. Yeah, if you've kept a news channel on for hours, it's like it's like brainwashing. And he said, I don't understand, but I'm looking at these images of the people who are suffering, and I pray for them. It's a way to remember them and to connect myself with them. It's completely changed this vision. I mean, the news, the piece of news didn't change, but the way of interacting changed. And this is the key. It's not about changing the practical aspects of our life. That naturally will come, but change the way we live our daily lives and give priority to what happens inside our subjective reality, and along this process of constant training to see how we're transforming. It's a constant training. Physically, we're training our body every day, aren't we? As we sit, as we eat, as we move, we're transforming our body, aren't we? Yes. Our brain is the same thing. And just on a side note, we should never stop learning, not to accumulate information, but just to keep our minds awake and sharp, to this ability to learn. This is extremely important. As we eat, we transform ourselves. Where we live, the places that we visit, every situation, it's a training, it's a transformation of our being. There's a part, there's an inner mind, but we live as if there is also the inner environment, but we think that it's only our external environment is important. Thinking that how I live situation depends exclusively on what happens outside, but it's not like that. The reality is there are a million different ways of living the same situation, and it's difficult to accept this, but more than the reality is that the external environment is a result of my inner environment, much, much more than the opposite. Yesterday I was in the car and somebody was talking. It was a doctor's conference, and he was talking about trauma, and he used a term that I liked. He said, imagine a couple where there's a couples therapy, and the wife says, I have this problem with my husband. He gets angry for nothing. And I went to see, well, really, what happened? For example, I don't get to lunch on time, and he gets angry. Everything gets angry. And he called it micro abandonments. So for someone, for example, who has never been abandoned, they wouldn't be bothered by these situations. But someone who has a strong feeling of having been abandoned lives that present experience through his past. We all live our present through our past. So what happens that when we talk about the external environment, what I live, if I say, oh, you didn't tell me that you would be late for lunch, is different from you abandoned me. I mean, it's my subjective reality that determines how I live this. Our inner environment strongly determines our outer environment. Even what I see, what I hear, when we see something, we think we're seeing what is there, but we're seeing only what we're able to see. What comes to our eyes is only light, and we're able to see what we're able to see. It's really incredible when you look at this more deeply, but it's important to remember that it's our inner environment that has power over our external environment. And it's not because something happened in the past that you have to live it today. We can take the memory from the past. I look at the wounds of the past and know that I can heal, because the more I live my present through those wounds, the deeper those wounds become, and the more and more I repeat those experiences. It's possible to not do that. But for me, a part of this is our ability to take the reins in our own hands and say, okay, and if I already have them, I keep them close. Because my inner environment, my subjective reality, my emotional reality, that determines how I live the world and the situations outside. Not only because it's our inner environment that determines our choices that then will determine our external environment. It's fundamental to not, and then of course there's also, there's most of our mind is just a movie, isn't it? Yesterday I had an experience. Was it yesterday? Oh, the other day. The day before yesterday. I had an experience that really touched me. I was in the middle of a situation where there was something that I saw as a possible danger. and I put in personal effort to not give effort to, to, to my mind to become paranoid. Oh, if this happens or if that happens, how should I react, etc., etc. And there was a huge film that was going on. Instead of being in the present moment, we're involved in a future in a future film that doesn't exist, or connecting to scenes of a past movie. And when we're in that present moment, in that situation, we interact based on what's there, or based on the projections in the future and memories of the past. I had to put great effort. It wasn't very easy because it was a situation that I saw as threatening. So I put effort into taking deep breaths, concentrating, bringing myself to the present, and more than anything else, to not let myself be taken by those thoughts, but also not, but I was put effort into maintaining my direction and didn't allow myself to be taken by the conflict, by the worry. But what's beautiful is that we can give direction. We need to train, but it's possible. I see in myself often thoughts come that go in a certain direction or another, and then I take the reins in my hand. I said, no, we're going this way. And we can do that. There's some times that we'll be able, and other times we won't. Once, and it was a period that I think was very important for me. I'm very grateful for this, for my great fortune. I've always had a great coherence between what I feel and what I think. I'm able to keep that under control. But there was a period that lasted about 6 months where I would think one thing and I was feeling another, and I wasn't able to control it. For example, I shouldn't drink water. No, I know I shouldn't drink water. Obviously, I shouldn't drink water. Of course, I shouldn't drink water. Of course, I shouldn't water. Oh, water is so delicious. Or the opposite. Oh, I don't want this. I don't want this. I shouldn't. I should. Or I shouldn't keep this away from me. Often our reason tells us one thing, but our attraction or our aversion tells us the opposite. But up to that point, I had never understood what that meant, to have an attraction or an aversion stronger than reason. But it can happen. And we need to really be affectionate with ourselves. But there's something very important. When I did that stupid thing, when I do stupid things, and because we do, oh, I shouldn't drink water, I shouldn't drink water, I shouldn't drink water, I shouldn't drink water. Oh, the water is so good. After I've finished drinking the water, what we shouldn't do is justify. I know that I shouldn't have drank the water, but in Tibetan they say everything that comes before the but is worthless. I know that I shouldn't drink water, but this reason, that reason. I have a strong conditioning that took me to drink the water that I know I shouldn't. That I shouldn't drink, and I shouldn't repeat that without getting into any justifications. I know that I shouldn't react with anger. But if you knew what my child was like, and that person shouldn't have done this, no, we shouldn't justify. We should be kind with ourselves and redirect. Be kind with ourselves, but redirect with patience, with constancy. But giving the main importance, priority to our life. So, in addition to the practical, objective, the practical aspects, there's a whole world, subjective inner world that is making it so that we're cultivating one thing or another. I can do the same thing with nervousness or patience, like with joy or with boredom, right? So, for this reason, it's, it's a question of priority. To choose what is more important. And I'm not here to say that everyone should change their life and stop doing that job that you spend you spend more than 8 hours, because even if you actually work 8 hours, how much time do you actually dedicate to working those 8 hours? The time that actually takes you to get there and prepare for the prepare for. No, we have body. We need to nourish this body. We live in a society where there are rules, where there are means of exchange. One works, is productive, but the point isn't about the job I do. It's about how I work. How do I interact? If I sell sandwiches, or I park cars, or that man who touched me deeply, the one who sold coconuts, one of the most beautiful lessons I've ever learned. This man is in a faraway, remote beach was there selling coconuts. I love coconut water. I was so happy, not the actual fresh coconut, and I asked him, "Oh, how much is it?" This was my conversation. How much is it? And he gave me the price. And this man, very dark, he was about 50 years old, maybe 56. I don't know exactly. His presence, he taught me this union of humbleness and dignity that touched me deeply. Sometimes it's about how we do things more than what we actually do. We can give 1,000 different examples. I'm not here to say that you need to change your life or change what you do, change your family, change this, that, or the other. We need to change our priorities. In the sense, it's more important how I live than what I'm doing. How I transform. What am I cultivating is even more important. Getting to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what happens, there's no reason in the world that can take me from my virtues, um, uh, um, from my values. And we can connect with these Stoics. So I invite you to read this text, this Greek text. very, very many centuries old. It sounds like it really sounds like it could be from Kadampa, from Atisha time. It says that the things are of two types: those that depend on me and those that don't depend on me. That which depends on me are my thoughts, my actions, my morality, my virtue, my behavior, my emotions. These things depend on me. What doesn't depend on me? What other people do? What happens around me? What happens to my body? This doesn't depend on me. And then goes on to say that suffering comes from trying to have control over what doesn't depend on me, and to letting go of control on what depends on me. So happiness can be found by having control over what we can control and letting go of what we cannot control. And the, at a, so this this author was originally a slave, and at a certain point his arm was broken, and he said, this is not painful. This is not painful. This extreme is not painful. But without having to get to this extreme, try to avoid even breaking your arm. But remember that also, being a slave, it was also a way to protect oneself, but without going to this extreme. Also, the body is somewhere in between that which depends on me and doesn't depend on me. It's a little bit more delicate. But let's give more importance to what depends on us. And that just changes. That'll change your life. Because many of our problems, our suffering, are about things that do not depend on us. How I interact with that situation, does that depend on me? Yes. What is happening in that situation, does that depend on me? No. This totally changes everything. But it's important to remember that these things need to be brought to our daily lives. How someone else treats me, does that depend on me? No, that's not my problem. Not because I don't care, because it just doesn't depend on me. Even no matter how much I'd like to do something about it, doesn't depend on me. So look again at our own priorities and decide what our path is. In life, we're born alone, we live alone, and we die alone. No one can live our life for us. We can be close to many, we can be affectionate, we can offer love and friendship. This is wonderful. But at the end of the day, we're the ones who have to stand up on our own 2 feet, in one way or another. So the importance of looking at our priorities, have this clarity that it's inner environment, external environment, and it's our inner environment that determines the outer environment. So our inner environment needs to be cultivated. And there's certain aspects of the external environment that if we don't have a strong inner strength, will not be able to face. So we need to also protect ourselves from certain external environments. I don't know if this is clear. If you are addicted to chocolate, or if someone is addicted to chocolate, you don't give him chocolate. Or you don't go to the chocolate festival. If I know that I have a certain dynamic and I'm not able to stop, like this, what we talked about before, I was shocked a couple of weeks ago. At home, I have puppies, and the first night, I had to stay close to them during night. You need to. They were very, very little. There was one night I wasn't sleepy. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I picked up my cell phone and I got onto YouTube and I saw YouTube shorts and I started looking at it. I got into a deep state of samadhi, a great meditative concentration. I realized at a certain point, one of the dogs barked, made a noise, and it woke me up from this samadhi. And I think 3 hours had gone by. 2 hours for sure. And what's crazy is at a certain point that it was like the same song with different videos of really deep things to very superficial things. And I was just absolutely mesmerized. And I was there. And the worst of it all is that the day after, in my mind, when there was a little space, a little gap where I didn't know what to do, where was that impetus? So what did I want to do? So I wanted to repeat that. So I went to get my phone, and then I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I had to do this at least 3 more times to block myself. I saw how in one time was creating this addiction, and this is no joke. At a certain point, if we go, maybe someone who teaches meditation, before beginning the lesson, one would have to ask, how long has it been? How long has it been since you've picked up your cell phone? 3 months? Okay, 3 months, then you can meditate. Otherwise, forget it, because actually goes in the opposite direction. We're constantly taken. A slogan I want to promote is leave social media for your mental health. It's no joke. Abandon social media for your mental health. I've talked also to friends, to doctors who work in certain institutes to really look into mental health and the correlation between social media and mental health. I don't want to be boring, just repeating the same thing. But when there's the danger in front of us, and we're all in the middle of this, we need to look at it. And someone might say, "Oh, but." We need a healthy mind, because without a healthy mind, we're more easily influenced, and we're weaker. We get to conclusions without being able to elaborate information. So yes, someone might say, "Oh, the climate is more important, more pressing." It's as important, but without our healthy mind, we're not going to be able to make good decisions. Remember, just to conclude, we are not static beings. We on a karmic level, on a DNA level, on an emotional level, mental level, physical, mental, spiritual level, all levels that you know and don't know. There's no one who's static. On all levels, we're in constant transformation. But this transformation just doesn't happen randomly. It comes according to our interactions, our daily interactions in every moment. And that's why we're always in this state of transformation. The direction we go with this transformation, that's the direction we can give. If I want to transform with awareness, you know, I can transform myself with awareness, or I can just transform myself without being aware, and what happens, happens. But if, in Buddhism, there's this concept of the Pure Land, which is different from heaven, the concept of heaven. A Pure Land is a place, not where everything is marvelous. The concept of heaven in many traditions, and sometimes in Buddhism too, it's a place where you can have everything that you'd like to have. You're free from everything you don't like, and it's like that forever, right? That's more or less like this. I've seen it explained like this. A Pure Land is not a place where you have everything you want. It's a place where most of the beings who live in that place are beings who are spiritually elevated. I always imagine that the Pure Land like this. In the morning you go to the bar, and the barman is someone like Lama Gangchen, and there with love and wisdom and compassion. You go take a taxi and you find the same love. So most of the people that you meet are people. Imagine you go to school from kindergarten to university. There, all the teachers are people of great stability, joy, wisdom, love, and all the rest. It would be easier for us to develop our qualities. That's a Pure Land. If a Pure Land is only for pure beings, then we're excluded from the get-go. But so it's an Pure Land is a place where most people are more spiritually elevated. And it's said that even there also in the Pure Land, there are those who cannot be influenced. But this is the concept of Pure Land, of Amitabha Sukhavati, where there's Buddha Maitreya or Ganden, Tushita. There are different names that are given depending on the Tibetan cosmology. But the concept is this. Unfortunately, we don't live in a Pure Land. So we need to make ourselves a Pure Land. And so we can't just let ourselves be influenced by the world, hoping to be taken to the right direction. We're the ones who need to give that direction to ourselves. But it's said that those who are in the Pure Land, who've already taken these great steps, are bored. They don't have the challenges to meet. This is a story of this old monk who had tremendous compassion, and he always had a beautiful life, and he had this intention. He wanted to be reborn in the place where there was most suffering, and as he was dying, he had this vision of a marvelous place. He said, no, that's not what I want. It's not what I want. So those who have these higher states of being, like I said at the beginning, anyway, let's set the right priorities for ourselves, because life is made up of choices. And at the end of the day, we need to choose. You can't have everything. We need to make choices. And in our choices, when we choose one thing, we lose something else. You can't have everything. But what are our priorities? Patience, balance. How am I transforming myself? This is, in my opinion, not lose respect, not lose love. Rinpoche taught in his actions, not in words, was once he gave someone his friendship, it was forever, regardless of whether that person gave him his friendship. And I've given you my friendship. What you do with it is up to you. So, being able to maintain our virtue, um, our coherence, and cultivate that, because life goes by quickly, and we soon will die, even if we have a long, long life ahead of us. This is what I wanted to bring to you today to share with you, and I'll be here next week. It's time for our dedications now.
Jetsun lame kutse rapten chin namkra chinle chokchur ge padang losan tempe dreme sasumki drove munsela tatu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dang dralme cheki pela longche chi sada lamge yönte rabzone Dorje changi kopa nyurtob sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shin nyinsen takto delek pe kuncho sumki chingilo kuncho sumki ngodrubu tsol kuncho sumki trashi shun All'alba
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Trashidele. Thank you, everyone.